Hello. Welcome back to Are You Ready for Your Inspection podcast. I am here with another member of our Jigsaw team. Those of you who listen to our podcasts on a regular basis will know that when I do podcasts, I often say, Anthony, can you do this?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Do.
Welcome, Anthony, in the hot seat.
It's an honour to be here.
An honour to be here.
I'd like to thank my friends and family at home.
Okay, right. So, we have just done a magazine.
We have.
Very excited about the magazine.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say thank you for all your patience on doing all of these podcasts. You're the
right.
only person that I know that has an earbud in your ear and listen to me all day. And I don't know how you do it.
It's going to be different for this one because I have to listen to myself.
Yeah, and you will hate it.
And I'm going to have to watch myself in the video.
You will hate it.
I will hate it.
You will so hate it.
But, you know.
I never
Now
listen.
I know how you feel every time I show you a podcast. I'm like, no, I don't want to listen to my voice. I don't want to see myself.
I don't want to do, yeah. It's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wrote an article in our magazine.
I did indeed.
About men in early years. You also wrote
Yes.
a blog for us, I think.
I did.
About a year ago, maybe?
Yeah,
Year
I think
and
it
a
would
half,
have
maybe,
been
something
just
like
after I started.
Yeah,
So.
okay. So let's go back. So go back. So you got to remember, right, this podcast is between 10 and 15 minutes long.
I will.
All
I'll
right?
be good.
I'll be good, okay. But so you started in early years and came out of early years. So you started as an apprentice or as a level 3? How did you start?
I started as an apprentice, yeah. So it would have been around 2017, I think.
Okay.
And I started an apprenticeship here in Romsey.
Yeah.
Alongside doing a degree.
Yeah.
At that time, I didn't understand how complicated early years qualifications were.
Mm.
So we were all sort of under the impression while I was doing my degree, once I got my level 4, then that's great, I'd be qualified and in ratio. And then you find out the hard way that your level 4 doesn't really mean anything till you have your level 3. And then sort of went down a steady spiral of being like, okay, now I've got to do my level 5 and my level 3 at the same time.
Yeah.
Which was fun. So I spent thankfully it was a preschool, so I had the summer holidays off and pretty much spent the entire summer holidays scrambling through my level 3. Wasn't too bad because a lot of the stuff in the level 4 was quite similar information. And then, learned a lot of stuff. I think I learned probably about as much in practice as I did doing my degree itself.
Yeah.
Because I think you learn a lot in practice by interacting with the children, seeing how they interact with different toys, learning about the UIFS and seeing it in practice. But I think it's also good having the theorist side of things and thinking actually, when you're doing it in practice, you're like, yeah, I'm doing it. But when you've done the theorist side of things and that little bit extra you get from doing the level 5 and level 6, you sort of actually think, this is why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And it sort of helps those ideas flow a bit more, especially when planning activities, because you can sort of relate to how a child likes to learn and then link that to a theorist. Yeah. And then it's a lot easier to plan activities going forwards.
So being a man in early years, actually thinking about it, in preschools you don't see that very often. No, you don't.
Sometimes when we're working here, we're talking about nurseries. Like the world of nurseries is like completely out of my realm really, because I've not had much experience with it. I'm always used to preschool.
Yeah, yeah. So talking about, talk about why did you come out of early years?
So I left early years initially.
I mean, you're still in early years.
Well, yeah, I'm still in early years.
Yeah, but
I left practice in early years. It was around COVID time.
Yeah.
I started working at a new nursery, and it's just simple things. I feel like a few clashes between me and management, just different personality types and different views on how we should, what we should do with activities and with the children and stuff, which can happen anywhere.
And actually, if it doesn't fit right with you, we always say never get off the bus. There's no point.
Yeah, it didn't align with my viewpoints of childcare, which it just happens.
Yeah.
And sort of I tried to stick with it, which I think was the bad thing, because I sort of pushed my point to an edge where I'm like, I just need anything to get out of this job sort of thing. Yeah. Because I just couldn't do it anymore. So I had I call it like a quarter life crisis.
Okay,
I think that's a good way to describe it.
Okay.
And panicked and just thought, I need to get out. So I quite literally went to the pub my girlfriend works at and was like, hey, do you have any jobs?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can start next week. So I was like, okay, cool. And saw a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. And then realised that pub work's not that great either. Not the most.
Grass isn't always greener, is it?
No.
No.
So a lot less stress in terms of like if you leave work at the end of the day and someone hasn't, I don't know, you haven't washed the glass properly, it's not the end of the world. Whereas in early years a bit, if you've not done something, you're just sat there thinking, oh, what's the worst thing that can happen now?
Exactly.
But then sort of having that time out of early years and reflecting on it sort of made me realise that this doesn't sound like I'm showboating a bit, but I have a decent amount of knowledge around early years. And it probably is working in early years to some aspect or degree is probably where my passion lies.
Yeah.
I think I definitely prefer doing more this side of things where I'm not in practice, but I'm taking a step back. You can sort of...
You're still giving.
Yeah, you're still giving advice, you're still helping people in early years
Yeah.
and supporting the children, but you're not directly in it. I don't know if I could work in a setting
No,
again
I
now
get
after
that.
taking the step.
Yeah.
the step
Why
out.
do you think that there is a lack of men in early years? Is it a stigma? What? It's going to be the money, but it's going to be a lack of staff in early years now, isn't it? Because
I was about to say it's not necessarily just men in early years
No.
anymore, it's
No.
people in early years in general. But I do think maybe not necessarily stigma, so to say, as much anymore. I think society as a whole is becoming more accepting of people and people doing what they like.
We'd like to think they were.
Yeah, we're a lot less judgmental as a society, I'd say.
Yeah.
At least most people are. But I think that doesn't mean it's necessarily a norm for men to work in early years. So I don't think it's necessarily a case of men aren't working in early years because they're scared, they're worried what people are going to say. I more think it's a case of, for a lot of them, it doesn't cross their mind as like an avenue they could go down.
No, I know.
Because as much as we try to be more accepting as a society, I think there's still very much the whole, men do more manual labour or physical jobs and women do more like hairdressing, childcare and the early years kind of thing.
Hair
I think
and
as,
beauty.
yeah, and I think
And
as
dog
much as
grooming now, just
Yeah.
seeing that a little bit more now. Yeah.
and I think as much as you can try to argue it, and I would say it's getting better, I think those foundations are still set in place based on like just centuries of history and that sort of kind of being the norm.
Yeah.
So I mean the money side of things doesn't help.
No, it doesn't.
But I do think for a lot of people it just doesn't cross their mind. I mean, until I worked in early years, I would have never imagined myself working in early years.
It probably did help that your mum was in early years too.
Yeah.
So
it
that actually gave you a little bit of support there
did.
as
Yeah,
well.
a bit of an insight into what it's actually like. Whereas when you don't really have that insight, you kind of fall into a bit of a stereotypical category of what people view early years as. And you see that a lot of the time when you look on social media and the news and stuff like that we often get forgotten about in general. Whenever legislation comes up, they're like, oh, we're doing all this to schools, and everyone in early years is like,
What
okay.
about us?
yeah, what about us?
Isn't that a Pink song?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about us? Sorry. Yeah. Bring a bit of Pink into it.
But I think in terms of getting more men into early years, I think it is all just to kind of do with educating the next generation. I think having stuff like, I think it's called gender flexibility, where toys are just toys.
Yeah.
There's no set toys. I'm sure, I'd like to say that 99.9% of settings don't stop a boy from playing with the dress up and stuff like that. But I think promoting that and actively engaging with that's kind of one of the key points.
Yeah, totally.
Because
there's your British
realistically,
values, linking it in, your mutual respect and tolerance.
and I think actually just saying to people or letting people understand that you can do whatever you want regardless of your gender is the main thing.
Yeah.
Really.
I think that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really important. But also people are scared to ask questions.
Yeah.
You and I in the office.
Many a debate.
Many a debate.
Yeah. I think people
Is that a good thing, many debate? I think it is. I think it's open. I like the fact that we have that
I
open
think it's good
conversation.
because I think with people being too scared to ask these questions based on like a backlash and stuff, and I think honestly, I personally partly blame Twitter, or as it's now called X, for a lot of this. Because you'll get people talking about maybe controversial topic or something they don't have a lot of understanding about.
Yeah.
They say the wrong thing. And instead of people taking the time to educate them on why it's wrong or support them to understand it, they've just gone in and attacked them. And that kind of defeats the point. A lot of like feminism and like anti-racist movements and stuff, the whole purpose is you need to educate people on why you shouldn't be racist, why you shouldn't assume anything about anyone's gender, race,
Yeah,
or treat them any differently.
Yeah.
But I think people are so quick to hop on the attack, they forget that actually
there is a human on the other side who
Yeah.
may not understand, but might need a little bit of
Yeah.
like, let me tell you, because we have these open conversations,
Yeah.
and I go, right, Anthony, say it to me how it is, explain
Yeah.
to me why, and then we have that open. And you're very much like Emily, my daughter's exactly the same.
Yeah.
We would have that open discussion. But you're right, and actually social media has a great big thing out there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think the problem is if you're going from a point where you're not understanding why something's wrong and you're trying to seek out advice for it, and everyone attacks you for it,
Yeah.
I feel like you're more likely going to go the opposite way,
Totally.
because suddenly you're like, well, actually, I tried to find out more. No one tried to help me. No one cared. Why should I make the effort?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. Going back to men in early years, then, any top tips that would you encourage men to go into early? Because I just think about the children that in settings that I've worked in, and there've been men there. Honestly, it's like you're a species from out of this world, and they look at you as if to go, "Oh my God, I love you."
Yeah.
And you're just like, what about me? What about me? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would encourage more men to get into early years, especially for the children who may lack a positive father figure or male role model in their life. But I think it's also important to remember that you don't necessarily have to have a male practitioner in your setting to actually educate the children about having a positive male role. It doesn't necessarily have to be a staff member, but look around your local community, see which people you can bring in. If you've got any librarians that are male, or even any principals or head teachers, get them to come in and read the stories.
Actually. That's a really good point, because actually when we get the community coming in, they're usually female.
Yeah.
Why do we do that?
And I think you're kind of crossing two birds in one stone, because you're collaborating with the local community and you're giving these children more positive experiences with male role models.
And actually, some children may not have a male role model in their lives, would they?
No.
So actually, providing that for them
is
really important.
I think it's key, really.
Yeah, I do think it's key. That's a really good shout, really good piece of advice. Thank you. How's it been joining me on the podcast on the settee? I feel like all I've done is sit down on the settee today.
I mean, to be fair, we've been doing a lot of our long recording
sessions.
I know,
but we say we do this, don't we? And then get it done.
We do.
Then forget
and then
that
3 months down the line, I forgot I've ever done this, and be like, it's time for you to record your podcast. And I'll be like, please don't.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you to those of you who are listening, and I hope you are going to have a good week, and we will see you next week. Take good care.